My risen one, picture a house that has been standing for years. Not a house anyone would call remarkable from the street. The kind that gets past without a second glance. Modest in its exterior. Ordinary in its proportions. The paint worn in a few places. The porch holding the memory of seasons that pressed against it hard. But step inside. Step past the door and stand still for a moment in the entryway. Let your eyes adjust, because the moment you go deeper, the moment you move beyond what is visible from the outside, you begin to understand something that the street view could never have prepared you for. This house was built on something extraordinary. Every beam, every wall, every element in the framework was placed there with a love that most builders have never even attempted. The architect did not cut corners where the walls would hide the work. The foundation goes deeper than any inspection could have discovered, because the one who poured it was pouring it into ground that would one day need to hold the weight of storms that had not yet arrived. Every joint was fitted with patience. Every measurement was taken with care that borders on devotion. And underneath all of it, underneath the surface that the world sees and judges and passes without noticing, there is a story written into the very material of the structure that cannot be erased, cannot be renovated away, cannot be made irrelevant by weather or time or the opinions of people who never came inside. That house is you, and I am the one who built it. Let me speak to something that has been quietly troubling you. The question of whether your prayers are actually going anywhere. The accumulated weight of having spoken words into a space that did not seem to respond, of having brought the same request to me again and again across the span of days or months or years, of having done everything you understood to do and then waited and found the waiting longer than you anticipated. The question, which you may not have spoken out loud, but which has been present somewhere underneath the surface of your ongoing belief, is this: does any of it actually reach me? It reaches me. Every single word, every prayer spoken in full sentences, and every prayer that was nothing more than a feeling too large and too complicated to organize into language. Every desperate middle of the night reaching toward something that felt very far away. Every quiet expression of what you needed and what you feared and what you were still, despite everything, hoping for. Every prayer that felt thin even as you were saying it. The kind where the doubt was present alongside the asking, and you were not entirely sure the doubt did not disqualify the asking. The doubt does not disqualify the asking. Faith the size of something very small, something so small you can barely perceive it, is still faith. And faith, regardless of its size, reaches me. Not because of the quality of the faith, or the eloquence of the expression, or the theological precision of what was said, because you turned toward me, because in the act of asking, whatever the condition of your certainty when you did it, you acknowledged something true, that I am the one who has what you need, that I am the one with the capacity to address what is beyond your capacity, that whatever your doubts about other things, there was enough remaining belief to turn in my direction and say something. That turning is the thing. That turning, in every form it has taken, in every prayer you have said, and every prayer you were too depleted to say, but felt somewhere in you nonetheless. That turning has been received. It has all been received. I have not missed any of it. I have not set any of it aside for later review. I have been engaged with every specific thing you brought and every unspoken thing that underlies what you brought. And the response to all of it is already in motion, even in the cases where what is in motion is not yet visible to you from where you stand. There is a particular kind of prayer I want to acknowledge. The prayer for someone else. The times when what you brought to me was not about yourself at all, but about someone you love. A child you have been watching struggle with something you cannot fix for them. A marriage or a family relationship that has been under strain and that you have been carrying to me with a consistency that has not been matched by any visible change in the situation. A friend you have been believing for when the friend did not have enough belief left to believe for themselves. The person in your family who is far from the life you know is possible for them, and who you have not stopped reaching toward in the only way that reaches further than any human hand. Those prayers are not small. They are among the most costly things a person can offer because they are sustained across seasons of no visible return, maintained through discouragement, renewed in moments when you had very little left to renew them with. That kind of sustained, costly, other-focused asking is something I receive as one of the most genuine expressions of love I am given, because it asks for nothing for yourself. It is pure reaching toward something on behalf of someone else, out of the fullness of what you feel for them and the depth of your desire for their good. I have received every prayer you have said for the people you love. The work on behalf of those people is in progress, even in the cases where the progress is the most invisible and the most slow. The people you are praying for are not outside my concern or beyond my reach. The situations you have been bringing to me for the longest time are not the situations I have concluded are too complicated or too far gone for my activity to make a difference. Nothing is too complicated. Nothing is too far gone. The history of what I do with what seems completely impossible tilts definitively in one direction. I make something from nothing. I bring dry places back to life. I call things that are not as though they are, and they become. Keep speaking. Keep bringing what you carry to me. Keep saying the names of the people you love in the context of trust, rather than only in the context of anxiety. The speaking matters, not because it informs me of something I did not know, but because it keeps you connected to the channel through which what I am doing flows toward what you are asking about. It keeps the door open. It keeps you positioned in the conversation rather than outside it. And being in the conversation, staying in it, even when the responses are not arriving in the form or the timeline you expected, is itself an act of trust that I count and that I honor. Your prayers have not been wasted. None of them. Not a single word. Not a single moment of reaching. The complete collection of everything you have ever brought to me, spoken and unspoken, articulate and inarticulate, offered in moments of genuine belief, and in moments when the belief was mostly a direction you chose because you had nowhere else to go. All of it is in the accounting. All of it has been working, invisibly and continuously, in the full system of what I am doing in your life and in the lives of the people you love. The accounting is very large, and it is all in your favor. There is something specific I want to address. The voices. Not the loud external ones, but the internal ones. The ones that speak in a register that is easy to mistake for your own thinking. Because they have been there so long, they have learned to sound like you. The ones that arrive in the early hours of the day, before you are fully alert enough to evaluate what you are receiving. The ones that frame their assessments as honesty, as clear-eyed realism, as the kind of self-knowledge that a mature person would practice. These voices have been telling you things about yourself that I have not said. They have been telling you that your best is not quite enough. That other people move through the same territory with more ease and more grace and better outcomes, And the difference is something intrinsic to you, something you cannot work your way around, some fundamental deficiency of supply that means the life you were hoping for will always be just slightly beyond what you can reach. They have been measuring you against a standard I never set, and then presenting the gap as evidence of your inadequacy. They have been cataloging your inconsistencies and presenting the catalog as a comprehensive portrait of who you are, as though a list of moments when you fell short were an accurate representation of the full scope of a person I built with extraordinary care. That is not an accurate portrait. That is a forgery. I want to tell you who you actually are. You are someone who has kept moving in the direction of something better, even when the immediate environment gave you every rational reason to stop. You are someone who has maintained, through seasons of difficulty that would have diminished a lesser commitment, a thread of connection to me that was sometimes thin but never fully broken. You are someone who has loved people at cost, who has extended what you had when what you had was not much, who has given more than you received in enough relationships that it ought to have taught you a colder accounting of generosity, but somehow did not. You are someone who, in the moments when you hit a limit and fell short of what you intended for yourself, got back up. Maybe not immediately, maybe not gracefully, but eventually you got back up. And the fact that you are here, receiving these words, is itself evidence of a persistence in you that does not reflect the portrait the internal voices have been painting. You have persisted through things that were genuinely difficult, through the weight of seasons that were not small and that did not resolve quickly and that left real marks, through the particular kind of discouragement that comes not from a single dramatic defeat, but from the slow accumulation of small resistances, the minor ways that things did not work as expected, the draining quality of days when the effort was real and the return was not visible, the gradual erosion of certainty that happens when the invisible work of the unseen dimensions of your life shows no surface evidence for long enough that you begin to wonder if the invisible work is really happening. You persisted through all of that. That is not a small thing. The capacity to persist through genuine darkness, to keep going when the intellectual case for continuing is not compelling, to maintain a direction when the feedback from the environment is not confirming that direction. That capacity is not common. That capacity is what gets built in a person by the particular kind of experience that your seasons have provided. And that capacity is the material that the next chapter will be built with. Not in spite of your difficult seasons, but because of them, and more specifically, because of what you chose to do inside of them. What you chose to do was not give up. That choice is why you are still positioned to receive what I have been preparing. The person who gives up is no longer in position to receive what was meant for them in the season after the one that was too difficult. But the person who persists, who keeps the direction even without the reassurance of visible progress, who holds the thread of connection even when it feels thin and unreliable, that person arrives at the season of receiving, still in possession of what the receiving requires. You are still in possession of everything the receiving requires. Now I want to speak to the particular weight of the thing you have been calling your fault. The specific thing you go back to, the chapter that still has the heaviness attached to it, the moment or the season or the decision that you carry with you like a stone you cannot put down because you are not entirely sure you are allowed to put it down, because some part of you believes it needs to be carried as a form of accountability, as evidence that you take seriously what happened. You are allowed to put it down, not as a casual dismissal of the weight of what happened, as a deliberate act of receiving something that was paid for at a price you do not fully comprehend. The cost of releasing you from the permanent weight of your own failing was not small. It was total. Everything that the thing you are carrying would have required in terms of permanent consequence was absorbed completely by someone who had the capacity to absorb it, and who chose to do so because the alternative, the version of your life in which you carried it permanently, was not acceptable to me. It is not acceptable to me that you carry this permanently. The weight of what you have done belongs to a system that has already processed it. It was brought to an accounting, it was weighed, it was fully addressed, and you were declared free. Not free on the condition that you never struggle with it again. Not free in a technical sense while emotionally remaining bound. Free. The stone is not yours to carry. It was lifted from you by a decision that was made before you even knew it needed to be made. And every day you pick it back up, you are undoing, in your own experience, something that does not need to be redone. Put it down. Not because it was nothing, because it was addressed. Because the love that I have for you found the cost of addressing it acceptable, which tells you something very specific about how I value you. What you think of as your most significant failure, the thing that seems most disqualifying when it presents itself to your mind, was evaluated in the full weight of its consequence. And I decided you were worth addressing it for. I decided you were worth the cost. And that valuation, the one that says you are worth what it cost to make you free, does not change based on whether you feel worthy of it on any given day. You are worth what I paid, not because of performance, not because of potential, because I decided. The decision was comprehensive and it was final. And no chapter of your life that has come after it, and no chapter that comes after today, has the authority to revise it. Walk in the freedom of that. Walk in it imperfectly. Walk in it on the days when it does not feel available to you. Walk in it when the old weight tries to attach itself again. When the voice of accusation tries to pick the stone back up and place it in your hands with a reminder of all the reasons you should still be carrying it. Walk in the freedom anyway. Not because you have achieved a state of spiritual clarity that makes freedom feel natural. Because freedom was decided for you by someone who had the authority to decide it. And your feelings about your own adequacy do not get a vote in what was already determined by a love that saw you fully and chose you anyway. The house I built for you was not built with a storage room in it or that stone. There is no space designed into the structure of your identity for the permanent weight of what has already been addressed. When you carry it, you are adding to the structure something the architect never intended it to hold. You are placing in the weight-bearing walls of your soul a burden that the design never accounted for. And that burden, over time, does what no unplanned load does to a structure when it is added to a foundation never meant to carry it. It stresses what should not be stressed. Let the builder have the work of the building. Let me have the responsibility for what your life is becoming. Give me the stone. Not as a one-time act after which you never struggle with it again. As a practice. As a returning. Every time you find it in your hands again, every time the old narrative tries to make its case for why you should still be weighted down by what has already been lifted, give it back to me, not in defeat, in the deliberate exercise of a freedom that is yours, even when it does not feel like yours, even when every instinct formed by seasons of shame tells you that you do not deserve to walk without that weight. Walk without it anyway. That is what it means to receive. There are things prepared for you that require a person moving forward freely to receive. Things that cannot be picked up by someone who is too weighed down by what has already been addressed to have hands available for what is new. The provision that is coming toward you. The open doors that are approaching someone who is moving toward them. The relationships of alignment that are being positioned in your direction need someone who is present and available, and not so occupied with the management of old weight that there is no attention left for what is arriving. This is one of the reasons I keep asking you to release what I have already carried, because I need you with both hands free for what comes next. And what comes next is good. What comes next is better than what the closed seasons would have suggested. Better than the worst projections that discouragement offered you in the nights when it was loudest. Better than the diminished version of hope that learns to protect itself by asking for less so that the disappointment is smaller if the asking goes unmet. What I have prepared for you does not fit inside the container that reduced hope had made available for it. Expand the container. Expand what you are willing to believe for. Not into the territory of what seems impossible based on the visible evidence of your life up to this point, because visible evidence is never the full account when I am working. Into the territory of what my specific promises over your life would require if taken at face value. Into the territory of what a love like mine would naturally produce for someone I value the way I value you. Into the territory of a kindness that is not limited by your track record. A generosity that is not constrained by what you have been able to accomplish. An affection that chooses you at your least impressive and your most imperfect, because choosing you was never about your impressive or your perfect in the first place. You belong to a love like that, not from a distance, as its actual recipient, as the specific, named, known, and loved person for whom that love is not a general policy, but a personal decision made before time began and renewed in this exact moment. I see you in the full detail of your life right now. Every struggle that has not yet resolved. Every question that has not yet been answered. Every prayer that is still in motion between your heart and mine. Every relationship that is still carrying a fracture you have not been able to repair on your own. Every area of your life where what you see does not yet match what you believe is possible. Every fear that still lives in the quieter parts of your interior, even after everything you know about my faithfulness and everything you have witnessed of my activity in your history. I see all of that, and my response to all of that is not disappointment. It is not a calculation of how much further you have to go before you finally qualify for what you have been asking. It is not a review of your spiritual progress report followed by a determination of how much more evidence of your faithfulness I need before I am willing to release what I have been holding. My response to all of that is a love so active, it is actually doing something about it. Something is happening right now, in the areas where the weight has been heaviest, in the places where the resistance has been most consistent, in the exact locations in your life where you have been pressing against what felt like an immovable difficulty. Something is shifting, not because you finally said the right words, or reached the right level of spiritual development, or produced the right combination of faith and action that unlocked the mechanism of divine response. Because I am working, because my love for you has an agenda, and that agenda does not require your performance to be executed. My love for you has been working on your behalf this entire time. In the invisible places, in the deep structural places, in the quiet places where the work that produces lasting change always begins, long before the surface of anything shows evidence of what is happening underneath. Trust the seasons that feel like nothing. Something is always happening. Now I want to talk about the specific weight of what you have been calling your failures. The word failure has been attached to certain things in your life with a permanence that does not belong to it. There are things you did that went wrong. There are choices you made that produced outcomes you did not intend and would not repeat if you had the chance to revisit them. There are relationships that broke in ways that still carry a residue of sadness when they come to mind. There are seasons when what you attempted did not work, when the gap between what you were reaching for and what you were able to achieve created a discouragement that settled into your bones and stayed there longer than you expected. All of that is real. I am not going to tell you it did not happen, or that it did not matter. It happened. It mattered. And the weight of it is something I understand in full detail because I was present for every single piece of it, every moment of it, every private consequence of it that you have never told anyone about. But the word failure is not the word I use for any of it. I use different words. Words like evidence, like material, like preparation, like foundation. I look at what you call your failures, and I see things I can work with. I see experiences that built in you a specific and particular kind of understanding that ease could not have produced. I see moments when you had to reach for something beyond yourself because your own resources were genuinely insufficient. And in reaching, you contacted something real in me. I see the places where the gap between your intention and your outcome revealed to you the precise locations of your need, which is the necessary precondition for receiving what you could not have received without knowing you needed it. Failure, in my vocabulary, is not a verdict about a person. Failure is a description of a moment, and moments do not define people. They inform people. They develop people. They teach people things that no other classroom could have taught. And then the moment passes, and the person remains, changed by what the moment produced in them, and moves forward into the next thing carrying something they did not have before. You are not the sum of the moments that did not go the way you wanted. You are not defined by the distance between what you reached for and what you were able to grasp in a particular season. You are someone who has been reaching, and the reaching itself is what matters. The reaching is the evidence of what is in you that refuses to give up, that persists in the direction of something better, even when the immediate results do not justify the persistence. That thing in you, that persistent reaching, I put it there. Think about what I am telling you. The very thing that has sometimes made your seasons of falling short feel more painful. The fact that you keep expecting more than you are currently producing. The fact that you cannot seem to settle into a diminished expectation of yourself. The restlessness that comes from knowing that what is visible does not yet match what feels possible. That restlessness is not a flaw. That is the evidence of a calling. That is the echo of purpose. That is the resonance between who you are on the surface and who I made you to be in the depths. And the gap between those two things is not meant to produce shame. It is meant to produce motion, to draw you forward, to keep you reaching in the direction where your truest life is located. The one who keeps reaching has not failed. The one who keeps reaching is still in the story. And your story is not over. Not close to over. Not in the middle of a long ending that began some seasons back and is gradually winding down to a conclusion that is less than what was hoped. Your story is in an active chapter, a building chapter, a chapter where things that have been underground are about to break the surface, and things that have been prepared in invisible places are about to arrive in visible ones. The arc of your life is not trending toward diminishment. The arc is bending toward something I have been building toward, something I have been preparing for and preparing you for, and the preparation has been thorough. What I am building with you cannot be rushed. Not by impatience, not by the pressure of what feels overdue, not by the discouragement of seasons that have been longer than you expected. but it also cannot be stopped. Every accusation that was raised against you did not land where it was aimed. Every attempt to write shame permanently into the fabric of who you are met a barrier I placed around the core of your identity that the accusation had no authority to penetrate. Every voice that told you that you were not enough, that your best effort fell short, that someone else could have done what you attempted with less struggle and more grace. Those voices were working with incomplete information. They were evaluating visible output without access to what was happening beneath the surface, without knowledge of what I was building in the slow and quiet and often invisible way that my most significant work tends to proceed. The people who dismissed what you offered had no idea what they were dismissing. I know what is in you. I know what your life will produce as the chapters unfold. I know what is being built in the unseen places, in the character that difficulty is forming, in the depth that waiting is adding, in the precision of compassion that suffering is carving into you in ways that nothing else could have achieved. The people who passed without looking closely enough had the view from the street. I am working from inside the walls. Trust the builder when the building feels unfinished. Before I release you to go and live this day, let me say one more thing, not as an addition to what I have already said, but as a summation of all of it, pressed into a form you can carry forward when the fullness of everything else fades into the background of daily life. You matter to me, not as a category or a concept, or one among a vast undifferentiated multitude, as a particular and specific person whose name I know, whose history I know, whose fears and longings and repeated wrestlings I know, whose extraordinary qualities I know in the detail that only a creator knows the created. What you call your ordinary days, I call precious. What you call your insignificant moments, I call attended. What you call your unimpressive offerings, I call received with gladness. Nothing about your life is beside the point to me. Every prayer is heard. Every tear is counted. Every act of kindness you extended when extending it cost you something is recorded. Every time you chose to persist when stopping was the easier option. Every time you chose to love when the evidence for love was not compelling. Every time you offered what you had even when what you had was small, I saw it. I received it. It mattered. Carry that forward, not as a pressure to perform, but as a comfort. Carry it into the moments when what you are doing seems too small to matter, into the conversations where you wonder if what you said made any difference, into the long seasons of invisible work when you are doing what is right and the visible confirmation of it is not arriving. Carry into every one of those moments the knowledge that nothing you do in love, nothing you say in truth, nothing you choose in the direction of faith and goodness and persistence toward what I have called you to, none of it is invisible to me or wasted in the larger accounting of what your life is building toward. You are seen, you are known, you are loved. Those three things are not going to change. Go forward in that, not with a performance of certainty you have not earned through the absence of doubt, not with a display of confidence that papers over the very real questions that are still with you, with honest, imperfect, continuing trust in a love that does not require your certainty to function, with the daily practice of choosing to believe in the modest and sustainable way that real faith actually operates, that the one who built you has not abandoned what was started, that your story is still being written, that the chapter you are currently in is not the final word, and that what comes after it is being prepared by someone who has been faithful in every chapter that came before. Every single one of them. Amen. If this message touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to hear these words today. Type Amen in the comments to receive this blessing. Leave your prayer request there too, because you are not alone in what you are carrying, and community matters. And if you want to go deeper with what God is speaking over your life, there is a devotional created specifically for you, waiting at the link in the description. It carries extended prayers, declarations, and reflections designed to help you build the practice of receiving everything God has prepared. You deserve to walk in the fullness of what this love has made available. Take the next step